Dean had a relationship with this Isuzu truck dealer, and we had the contract, and we presented the contract to him, and so he financed 3 Isuzu trucks for us.
Wow.
I started calling all the corrugated box manufacturers, Rock 10 out of Georgia. Everybody said no, and I'm the kind of girl that no does not stop me. I keep going until I get a yes, and so I called every single company, and finally I got this woman, and I said, it's our first big opportunity. I promise you we'll pay you. I've got this contract. And she sent me the contract. And so they provided all the boxes.
Wow.
And
so you were able to leverage that contract with everything to get everything you needed to fulfill the contract.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. From Fiore Communications, it's How I Got Here, a show of inspiring stories from Tallahassee area leaders, business owners, and neighbors, all the challenges, opportunities, inspirations, the twists and turns of life that led them to where they are today. Everyone has a story worth telling, and I am really grateful that we get to bring a few of them to you. I truly have been changed by my conversations with these amazing people, and I'm confident you will be too. I'm Dave Fiore, and in this episode, I speak with Gloria Pugh, the president and CEO of AMWAT Moving, Warehousing, and Storage. Gloria was born in New York City and spent time in Colombia as an infant before moving to Miami with her mother and siblings at age 8. It wasn't long before she became an entrepreneur, sewing Barbie clothes from leftover fabric and selling them to her friends for a few pennies. She would later work at Publix, but was let go because the bilingual popular cashier spent a bit too much time socializing with the customers, her main outlet for the adult responsibilities she faced at home. After high school, Gloria came to Tallahassee, worked multiple jobs, and was eventually dragged by coworkers to the infamous Club Park Avenue, where she would meet a young man named Dean Pugh. Dean declared his love that night, but after not getting a phone number, embarked on a search that eventually led to Gloria's apartment and her heart. They've been together ever since. The couple would later turn a pickup truck and a dream into a global relocation company that is changing their industry. Gloria talks about never taking no for an answer, the importance of giving back to the community, and her gratitude for the many people who helped along the way. We begin our conversation talking about the early years.
So my family is from Colombia, South America. And my mother was very young when she married my father, and they came to this country. So New York City was where they landed. My father wanted to go to medical school. So they came to the United States, had my brother, and then they had me. After they had me, it was a lot for them because they were so young. So we returned to Colombia, and my father's sister was a nun. She has passed. My brother and myself, we lived at the nunnery, and we were raised by nuns. And
wow, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, and
how old were you at this point?
I was a baby. I was a baby. I was barely. I was months old, like maybe 4, 5, 6 months old. When my brother turned 4, they came back to get us because my brother was starting kindergarten, and they wanted him and myself to kind of acclimate to the United States. So we came back to the United States, and my brother went to kindergarten. My grandmother on my mother's side, Socorro, who is just the most amazing woman, she came to the United States to help take care of me. My parents, we've lived in Queens, Corona, Manhattan, but not the real high end,
not the fancy Manhattan,
not the fancy side of it.
Okay.
And so when I was 8 years old, my parents were very young, and so being young parents, they struggled in their marriage. But it was always a fun family life. I mean, you always kind of when you're a kid, you notice some of the arguments and what have you. But in general, we never noticed being impoverished or my aunts and uncles coming and living with us. And people working multiple jobs, full-time job, part-time job. Everybody's always working, but
Yeah.
there was always time for family and fun. And we just thought that's how everybody lived.
Right. Because unlike today where we compare ourselves to people we don't even know,
Yeah.
it's what you knew. It's what everybody probably in your neighborhood was similar, right?
Yeah, exactly. And but it was a really great experience for me. It's like I could not say, oh, it was horrible. It was a great experience. We loved it. My brother and I and my sisters, my two youngest sisters, we all loved it. We were surrounded by family and friends and lots of love and a lot of work. A lot of work. I mean, people were always constantly working, and that's what you did. And me as the oldest girl, I was, at a very young age taking care of younger kids and, prepping meals and keeping a home, keeping an apartment or a house while the adults worked. So
what impact now looking back do you think that had on you as far as work ethic and culture and family and doing whatever it took to, make ends meet and get things done?
Oh, absolutely. It had a lot to do with how I am today. My family taught me, hard work and family and being, and loving people. One of the things that my family instilled in me is that you work hard. If you are healthy and you are capable of working, then you work. You don't take resources away from the people who really need them. So, that's how we were raised, is that you work hard and you pay for your own way. You
Right.
don't take the resources away from the people who really, really need them, because that's not what this country is about. I've always believed in working hard, and to me, it's a source of pride.
Yeah.
To work hard and to show for it, with success, with being able to, create a business, grow it, employ people, and not just employ people, but be able to pay people living wages, that we want to make sure that our employees are being paid very well so that they continue to, that it creates loyalty and it creates a sense of these people are taking care of us and they care about us and they feel it.
Yeah.
They see it. They know it. That didn't just happen because Dean and I were like, maybe we'll work today, maybe we won't.
Yeah.
It happened because we worked very hard.
Yeah. So it's you, your older brother, and two younger sisters?
Yes.
Okay. And you're living in New York.
Yep.
And then at some point, the family picks up and moves to Miami, right?
Yes. So the way that happened was my mom comes to me and says, hey, we're going to go visit your aunt in Miami.
How old are you at this point?
So I'm about 8 years old.
Okay.
And she's like, hey, we're going to go.
Going to go visit,
We're going to
air
go
quotes,
visit. Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to go on vacation in Miami. So we're still on that vacation.
It was a long vacation.
It was a long vacation.
So she didn't think you would like the idea of moving.
No.
So you packed up. Were you suspicious when you packed up all your stuff?
No, because we didn't. Because we packed our clothes, and the apartment was. We left.
You didn't own a lot, probably.
Yeah, no. And what was happening was that my mom was leaving. My parents were separating, and
okay.
so we pretty much left with our bags of clothing, and we went to my aunt's house, and she had moved into a 3-bedroom house. So my mom and two sisters, two sisters. My mom had her own room, and her two younger sisters had they shared a room, and then there was a third room, and all the kids shared that room.
Okay. So what is life like for you now? So you're middle school-ish, or junior high, whatever it was called, and high school in Miami. That's a whole different environment. Mm-hmm. What was life like for you there? How did you do? Did you enjoy school? What was high school like? What was Gloria as a teenager?
I still had the responsibility of taking care of my sisters.
Okay.
Because my mother, she did remarry. I was still in charge of my sisters.
So you couldn't be
No.
just a fun-loving teenager with nothing to worry about but yourself and
No. I
school
have basically been an adult all my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. My sisters and my
Was that hard?
No, because I didn't know any different. And I have a very, very tight relationship with both my sisters. They are my best friends and my brother. Reflecting back on all the time that I spent with them, I would not trade it for anything. And my sisters consider me their mom.
Right.
And they rely on me and they trust me and they're very loyal to me. It's kind of like my mom, the relationship she had with her sisters. She took care of them.
Right.
And so I learned it from my mom. And so I took care of my sisters and my brother. I had girlfriends. I went to school, but I didn't go out a lot with friends. I did not do sleepovers. I did not, do after school activities because it was, taking care of my sisters, of coming home, taking care of my sisters. And when I was old enough to drive, it was, picking them up, taking them where they needed to go, just basically taking care of them.
Right.
You can imagine when I came to Tallahassee by myself and I no longer had responsibilities and I met Dean.
So there's a pivot in the story from that point. All right. So after high school, right after, you worked in retail. You were teaching aerobics.
Yes.
So tell me about all of that. That sounds like you were very busy even then.
Yes. So in high school, I worked at Publix, and I had the best customers. I was also, it was working gave me social.
Right.
So I saw working as, oh my God, I don't have responsibilities. This is like my social activity. Publix, they're an awesome company, but they parted ways with me after a while because They
parted ways with you?
Yeah, they parted ways with me. I was 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
And so I would scan, we were in our green uniforms, and I would scan something. If on the third time it didn't scan, I'm like, well,
it's not working.
It's not working. So I remember we were really busy and the line, and then of course I socialized with the customers.
Right.
And so I had people that wanted to
Which
come
you're
see
encouraged
me.
to do, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So it was really busy, and there is a line, my line, and it is going down the aisle. And the manager's going, oh, these cashiers, they're open. They're like, no, we're here to see Gloria. We're here to see Gloria. And so they're like, we can't have this. So they thought I was socializing a little too much. So,
right.
yeah.
So did you speak English like from birth, or was Spanish your first language?
My mother and my aunts and my uncle, because my uncle was also living with us, they were very good at teaching us English and Spanish. They thought it was really, really important for us to speak English. They wanted to make sure that we were not they were very sensitive to people judging us because we were Colombian. And they did not want for us to go out into the playground and not be able to speak English and then be targeted. We spoke English and Spanish in the household.
Right.
And, it's interesting how a child they know the difference of, okay, now I'm switching to English, now I'm switching to Spanish. And I'm really grateful that they did that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But your everyday life, like working at Publix, you were speaking English primarily?
English and Spanish because
in Miami it's a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
It's a huge asset for survival, right?
Yeah. One person says, oh, ¿cómo está Gloria? And the other one's like, hey, Gloria, what's up?
Was there a stigma to being Colombian at that time down in South Florida?
Yes. In South Florida and New York, because we would go back and forth, yes, there was a stigma because you had a lot of the whole cocaine cowboy kind of thing. But that was the interesting part, that it was the Cuban population that was more into it, into the Miami, because they were distributing while the Colombians were the ones who were flying and dropping into the waters. But
the Cubans were the most actively involved in bringing drugs into our country because they were bringing them from Colombia.
Colombia, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The first time that Dean came to meet my family, and, at this point, my family has, because of their hard work, they, climbed up the socioeconomic status. So
Yeah.
they had more resources, more means, and what have you. So the first time that we went to visit my family, for them to meet Dean, we were driving into our neighborhood, and the house across the street, the cops were there. There were, all of the tape, and just it was just Dean had never seen anything like that. He's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" I was like, "Oh, they probably did a shooting or something." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's normal. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal,
Right.
what have you." And when we were in school, we went to a private school. My sister, on her way to school, she was riding the bus, and they stopped the bus, and these people, came on the bus and took one of the kids, and we never saw the kid again. So it was not uncommon for fellow classmates to their families to be in the crosshairs of the drug wars. I had a friend, and I still remember him, and I remember him wearing a fur coat. And, in Miami, it's like 60 and everybody's got their fur coats out, right?
Right.
So his family, he came home from school, and his mom and dad were hanging from the the second floor. So it was, the kids who were 80s and 90s in Miami, it was, somehow or another you were exposed to it because of the other kids that you were associating with.
Right.
So,
Wow.
yeah, coming to Tallahassee was like, wow.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. How did you end up in Tallahassee? What made you move up here?
So I was dating this guy. He had graduated Florida State University, and so he was coming for homecoming. And so he was like, "Hey, do you want to go to homecoming with me?" And I was like, "Sure." So I came to Tallahassee. He was in a fraternity, and I loved Tallahassee. I loved the rolling hills. I loved the change of season. I absolutely had a really, really nice time. We broke up, and I was 19 years old. And I wanted freedom. I'd spent, like, from my first recollection, I was always taking care of kids. I was always taking care of my sisters. I was always doing something. I was always having responsibility and obligations. And so I just got to the point where I was like, I just want, and I felt so bad. It was a really tough decision because I was leaving my sisters, but they were in a good spot, and, we were much better off financially, and my mom had divorced my stepfather, so that was the biggest thing. Yeah. And so I felt that, okay, this is a good time for me to be able to do something different.
Break away a little bit.
Break away.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I need a job when I get to Tallahassee. So I got a job at the Limited because I knew that they had a Limited store here in Tallahassee at the Governor's Square Mall at that time. And so I got a job at the Limited, and I became like the best employee they ever had. And so then I asked, if a transfer was available, and they were like, "Well, we hate to lose you, but we'll definitely." So they called and said, "This is somebody that you definitely want working for you."
Right.
So I had a job when I got to Tallahassee because I have been financially independent since I was 19 years old.
Right.
And helping throughout, my life, helping my mom as much as I could because, it was when you've got, kids and private school and all the expenses. So when I came here, I worked at the Limited, and then I was able to find a job at a law firm. I went to TCC, and then I was applying to Florida State University, and I met Dean, and I needed to work because, I needed to pay for my car, for my insurance, for my apartment, and what have you. I decided one day that I didn't like working at the Limited. And like, it's just teaching aerobics, working at the Limited, working at the law firm was just so much. And so
Well, yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then trying to go to school.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own business. And so I took the phone book out and started calling every single law firm in town and asked, "Hey, do you need, temporary help or what have you?" And so the Pennington law firm at the time, they were in a really big pinch. Somebody had to leave medical illness or something like that, and they needed somebody. And so they're like, "Yeah, we do actually." And so I went to go work at Pennington as short-term, paralegal. And so they they were just impressed and loved me, and I loved working with them. And so all of the law firm administrators, they talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so the administrator came to me and said, hey, we don't have, another position for you, but this law firm does. Do you want to talk to them? And so all the law firms would talk, and they'd say, yeah, you want to. She's a young girl, and she's awesome, and detail oriented, arrives on time, very resourceful. You'll love her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for a long time, and I made really. I mean, that was so that was the first of my entrepreneurial spirit. Or actually, no. My first entrepreneurial gig was when I was a little kid. My aunt was a seamstress, and so she would give me the fabric, extra fabric.
Yeah.
And so we had Barbie dolls, but we couldn't afford the clothing. When you're a little girl and you have a Barbie doll, you want to buy all these clothing.
Right.
So what I would do is I would make clothing out of the
Scrap,
fabric, out of the scraps.
Yeah.
And so the little girls that lived, their parents couldn't afford Barbie doll clothing either.
Right.
So I would sell my clothing for a penny, 3 pennies.
So you had your own
nickel.
fashion line.
Yes, it was the Gloria Barbie doll fashion line,
Very
and
nice.
I would sell it to my little girlfriends.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah, I bet they were very excited to buy them from you.
oh yeah, they would. I got really good, making these little tiny little outfits.
tiny outfits.
Yeah.
You've mentioned meeting your husband, Dean, in Tallahassee. How did that happen? What were those circumstances?
So I was working at the Limited. I did not go out because I didn't go out. I mean, I took care of kids, of my sisters. So I had some girlfriends that, I befriended. And after working there for a few weeks, they're like, you're like an old woman. You don't go out. You don't do anything. You're going to dress up tonight, and we're going to come and get you. And we're going out, and we're going to have a fun time. So my mom, I talked to her about just about every day, and I called her, and she's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, my girlfriends are coming, and they're taking me out to this bar and to a club to go dance. She was like, oh my God, Gloria, I just saw 2020, and let me tell you something, that these boys, when you go to the bars, they put drugs underneath their nails, and they put in a drink, and then you drink, and then you wake up the next day and you don't know where you are. And I'm like, oh my God. So we go to Club Park Avenue, and we CPA, yeah. What a great place, right? And we go in.
Made national news a few times, but
it did.
Yeah, there were some not great things that happened there.
Yeah, I imagine. So we walk in, and one of my girlfriends was like, oh my God, she saw Dean. And, girls code, she called out. And so I was like, whatever. And anyhow, so we're walking around, and him and his friends are following us. And my girlfriend's thinking that, Dean is into her. And then she finally is like, holy, no way. He's not into me. He's into Gloria. And so right when she said that, Dean comes over to me, and he's got, and I'm broke. I don't have any money to buy drinks. I can barely pay to get in. And so I'm like just really tense. This is me first, like really going out to a club. And so Dean shows up with a cup that is it's a drink, a melon ball. And
Right.
So he says to me, hey, my name's Dean. I got you a melon ball. And I'm like, oh my God, what my mom said, right? So I was like,
he's trying to drug me.
Yeah, he's trying to drug me. And I was like, oh my God, but I can really use a drink. So I looked at him and was like, why don't you take a sip out of it first? And so he's like, okay. So he did. And then I was like, okay. So
that was a smart move.
Yeah, smart move.
Yeah.
Smart move. So that night, Dean told me, he said, do you believe in love at first sight? And I'm like, what? And he's like, do you believe in love at first sight? And I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. And so we go and dance. And
so this is at the bar. The music's pumping. The lights are going. And
yes.
he's asking you if you believe in love at first sight.
Yes.
That's a strong move.
So he asked me to dance, and we're on the dance floor. The song from The Promise starts playing, and it's if you need a friend, don't look for a stranger. In the end, I'll always be there. And so, and then I promise. And so we're dancing to this, and then all of a sudden he gets on his knees. And he kisses my hand, and then he gets up and he says, one day soon, you and I are going to live at my family cottage home, and I'm going to marry you.
Wow.
So I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, remember, I'm from Miami, okay? And I've been, I just told you what I've been dealing with in Miami, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's like, I don't know about this guy. So he asked me for my phone number. I did not give it to him. But in conversation, I told him where I lived. I was living in Chateau de Ville at the time. Didn't think anything of it. Left with my girlfriends. Next Friday, I hear a knock on my door. And it's Dean, and he's got flowers in his hands with his Schwinn on his shoulder. And he's like, I've been knocking on all the doors until I found you. And the girl downstairs told me you lived up here. And the girl's like, oh, my God, Gloria, are you okay?
So by Schwinn, you mean a bike?
A bike.
He's got a bike on his shoulder, climbing up the stairs,
yes,
knocking on all the doors, looking
yes,
for you.
Looking for me.
So...
And he found me.
He found you. So how did you receive him then? I mean, what was going through your head when this guy from the bar is tracking you down on a Schwinn? On
a Schwinn, right? At that point, I thought, he's really cute, and wow, that's pretty big. That's pretty big. From that night on, here we are.
Here you are. So that was it.
That was it.
You were together ever since.
We've been together ever since. Of course, we were so young. I mean, we were in our early 20s, so lots of breakups and makeups. But
sure.
Yeah, but...
So I guess you believed more in love at second sight, I guess, maybe.
I guess so.
That's a pretty awesome story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Dean's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. So where do you go from there in your relationship? And I know eventually you end up starting a business together,
yes,
right? So is there some time period in between? Are you just, I don't know when you get married or what's that timeline? How does all that work?
So when Dean and I met, we were very young. We were early 20s. Dean was 19, I was 20. And recall that I did not experience a lot of the youth fun,
right,
partying and having a good time. So imagine, we're going to the clubs and partying and having a good time.
Right.
So that was,
You're making up for lost time.
Making up for lost time. So yeah, I became party queen in my mid-20s. I was like, I don't think this is the lifestyle for me. So that's when we started really kind of, changing our ways and becoming a little bit more, not so crazy. Dean had a pickup truck. When you're in your 20s and going to school and you have a pickup truck, everybody's moving. Think about how many times you moved in your 20s. And so if you had a pickup truck, your friends were always asking you to help move. And
I've heard there are two kinds of people in the world.
Yes, sir.
People with a truck and people who want to borrow one.
Yep. And that's pretty much how it started.
Yep.
And so I told Dean, I said, maybe this is an opportunity. We can start you can start a moving company. And he's like, well, what should we call it? And I said, a man with a truck, because my friends call and say, hey, can I borrow your man with a truck? And so a man with a truck was born. Dean and I started it. Dean was working on it full time. I was busy working with my job. And when I was working as a paralegal, Fowler White had hired me to work with one of their partners. He was so impressed with me that Fowler White made me an offer to stay with them. And it was such a good offer that I stayed.
Okay.
And we needed that steady income because we started a business.
Yeah.
So Dean did that for a while. And then in 2005, in between that, I went to the Attorney General's office to work as a white-collar crime investigator, working a lot because this was when OxyContin really became a big thing.
Yeah, pill mills and all that stuff.
Yeah. So that was, and it just didn't stop. And the number of investigators in comparison to the criminal activity is just enormous. And so I was working with the Attorney General's office, and we decided, Dean and I decided that, you know what, perhaps it's time for me to come to a man with a truck on a full-time basis. And so that's what I did in 2005. And the collaboration between Dean and I was just amazing because now he had me full-time.
Right.
And he was able to do, he's really great with sales. He's really great with operations and managing employees. And I'm very good with marketing and business planning and, strategic planning and, projecting and all the things, the infrastructure.
Yeah. So it sounds like a perfect match.
It's a perfect match.
What happened to the business once you came on board full time? What direction did it take after that?
I wanted to have a global relocation company. And so I told Dean that, and he's like, whatever I believe in you. And so that's what we became. We've become a global relocation company.
So at that point, did he have multiple trucks or employees or anything?
So no. So at that point, he had a truck and a half. And a truck and a half because that half truck, it was on good days it would start and on bad days it wouldn't. And Dean, we're in our 20s, and he is on the truck as well. So
Right.
it's not like he's an owner and he's just sitting back in the office and taking care of,
He's picking up couches and beds and moving stuff around.
Yeah, and booking work while he's on a job and what have you. He, when I came onto the company, it gave the company the benefit of somebody who was at the office and that was thinking about, okay, we need to have a solid foundation for this company and we need to have a, short and long-term goals. I, researched, having my investigative and paralegal background, I did a lot of research. And so I researched successful moving companies around the country, and Suddath was one of them. And actually, we have a really great relationship with Suddath.
So they were a good model for you as you were starting out.
As we were starting out.
Nice.
And so I reviewed their website. I looked at everything. And so I tried to model the company as much as I could like Suddath.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the Tallahassee Democrat, there was an article about Nolia Brandt and the Jim Moran Institute. And so I'm, laying on the couch reading the Sunday paper, and I'm reading about Nolia Brandt and how she came on to her husband had this technology company, and she came in and they started working together, and it grew up, and it's this big business, and she is a mentor at the Jim Moran Institute. And if you want to be mentored by the Jim Moran Institute, you have to have all this criteria. And we didn't meet all the criteria. But I had persistence.
Right. Like so many employees, so many years in business, that kind of stuff. Certain income level, gross revenue.
We didn't have none of that.
Yeah.
None.
So it's funny how it's such a small world that Noli and I are in the same Rotary Club. I worked with Bill on my first job I ever had in the late 80s, mid 80s. So Tallahassee is a very small place
as
far as relationships.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back. How I Got Here is sponsored by Barano Heating and Air Conditioning in Tallahassee. I've been friends with Patrick Barano since we met in a chamber leads group about 15 years ago. I'll admit that I pursued him pretty hard to be his marketing firm and eventually won him over. And the reason I wanted to work with him is that I was already a customer and I knew what kind of company he and his father before him had built. He cares about his customers, he cares about his team, and he cares about this community. I've experienced Barano Heating and Air when they installed a complete system replacement a few years ago, and I enjoy peace of mind and same-day service with my Total Comfort Service Agreement. I've also been behind the scenes at their office and seen firsthand the true character of this company. And that's why we're so proud to represent them. To learn more or to schedule an appointment online anytime, visit baranoac.com. They really always will be there for you. And now back to the show. So you and Dean have AMWAT kind of cranking along now. Was it hard to even pay yourself a salary at first? I imagine that transition was a little bumpy maybe.
Yes. So fast forward a few years, and all the advice that we received from Jim Moran Institute and Nolia Brandt, one of them was joining the chamber. Dean was so against it. He's like, no, we don't have the money and all this other stuff. And I was like, we're joining the chamber.
Right.
And we used every single resource the chamber had. And so, the chamber was really huge for us in our success. And, if they had a learning event, I went to it. If they had a networking event, I went to it. Every single event that they had that we could go to, we went to, so that we can network, we could, meet people, we can learn. And in addition to joining the chamber is the
Department of Economic Opportunity?
Yes. So they had networking events, and they also had events where they would teach you on how to become registered with the state of Florida, how to get a minority certification. And so we became very involved with that. And so the Department of Health had bid for, they moved the entire Department of Health, where Fort Knox, over to Southwood. And we had the truck and a half. And so I was like, I don't care. And they needed boxes and all this other stuff. So we bid for it. And we went to the bid opening. And this moving company that was from out of town, low bid, got it. And I called them. I said, listen, I know. I ran the numbers. There's no way they're going to be able to do this. So when they call you and tell you that they can't do it,
Right.
you give me a call. Dean and I were on our way to Boston to visit my sister, and we're at the Tallahassee airport. And we get, I get like a little, because this was like the beginning of it for us.
Yeah.
And so I get a phone call, and it's the Department of Health, and they're like, hey, you were right.
They can't do it.
They can't do it. Can you do it? And, it was a really big, it was the most money we've ever seen earned. It was like my paycheck for the year, know. And so we're like, yes, we can do it. And so when we got back to Tallahassee, Dean had a relationship with this Isuzu truck dealer, and we had the contract, and we presented the contract to him. And so he financed 3 Isuzu trucks for us.
Wow.
I started calling all the corrugated box manufacturers, Rock 10 out of Georgia. Everybody said no. And I'm the kind of girl that no does not stop me. I keep going until I get a yes. And so I called every single company, and finally I got this woman, and I said, it's our first big opportunity. You can, I promise you we'll pay you. I've got this contract. And she sent me the contract, and so they provided all the boxes.
Wow.
And
so you were able to leverage that contract with everything to get everything you needed to fulfill the contract.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
Yes. And this was during the holidays. This was during Thanksgiving that we were moving to Department of Health. We had all the guys there. We maxed out our credit cards, getting fuel. I made lunch for everybody. If I could move it, if I could roll it, if I could lift it, get out of my way because I was helping. It was the Thanksgiving, and the ladies at the Department of Health were so impressed with us. And we're all young. We're in our 20s, and we're this owners of this moving company and do this big job, and we're all be it super professional. And so they made Thanksgiving for us. And then when we were done with the move, they clapped. They just
really?
It was pretty cool. So that was the beginning of work for the state of Florida, because then the Department of Health told all the other state agencies about this amazing experience they had with us. And so, yeah.
And you're in the vendor system, easier to access. You're starting to see jobs you can quote on and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You can bid on.
Yeah. So we still work with the state of Florida, and we're very appreciative to the Jim Moran Institute, to Small Business Development Center, to the state of Florida, and to the Chamber of Commerce. All those entities were huge in our success.
That's awesome. At some point, a man with a truck becomes AMWAT, right? So what brought about that name change?
Ron Sachs, he said to me, Gloria, you know what? A man with a truck is selling you short, because a man with a truck, you can move a refrigerator, but could you move Tallahassee Memorial Hospital? And I was like, you know what? You're right. We can't. That's not a good name for us. So this is when texting started becoming big. And so a friend of mine said, hey, where are you at? And I was like, I did not want to spell a man with a truck. So I put AMWAT. I'm like, boom, hell to the yes. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
So texting got you your name.
Yeah, texting got us.
Awesome. Well, it makes sense.
Yeah. In fact, speaking of the chamber, when I was doing my research, I found a company because, we were in this little bitty, we were literally in a broom closet. There was a company, Auto Air, Danny Coates. He had rented a part of his office to us. It was super small, but it was gated, and so we could keep our truck and a half in there. So I was researching companies and best reputation companies or companies that have been in Tallahassee forever. And so Gabriel's, Larry Fabiano. I love him.
Yeah.
I was like, Dean, we need to buy that. That's what we need to acquire. And so I was at a chamber event, and I'm Latina talking with my hands, and I accidentally slapped somebody in the back. And I turn around, and it's Larry Fabiano. And I'm like, oh, my God, I've been dying to meet you. So we started having lunch on a regular basis, and he became a mentor to us. And then one day at lunch, I said, hey, we want to buy your company. He's like, oh, my God, I was so looking forward to the day you would say that to me.
Wow.
And so he was really big on our success as well.
So a big chunk of your business and the growth came from acquiring another company.
Acquiring Gabriel's. So he said yes. So now we needed to find funding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're this little man with a truck, less than $250,000 sales. We're in our early 30s at this point. And so we went to every single bank and it was no, we need this, we need that. I was like, well, I don't have it. How can I give you something that I don't have? I've had these state jobs. We're increasing our revenue. We're doing this, we're doing that. And I didn't graduate, university. I didn't have, like business experience or anything. Everything I was learning on the go.
Yeah.
I was, picking up Harvard business reviews, learning from whatever, whatever resource I could learn from. That's what I was doing. And so anyhow, I kept asking, and finally I went to ProBank. It was a fairly new bank, and went and had lunch. Asked the gentleman at the time that was the manager, asked to have lunch with him, and I had all my stuff and everything, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to take a chance on you." And he approved the loan. And I was like, oh, my God. And so he's like, well, let's not buy the property yet. Let's go ahead and buy the assets, and you can, rent from Larry. And once we see how you do, then we can talk about buying the property.
Go back and get it,
Yeah.
Which is pretty typical, right, in the purchase of a business, that you can break up the pieces so it makes it more manageable.
Yeah.
So obviously he was glad he gave you that loan.
Yep.
That worked out.
That worked out.
Yeah.
And then we purchased the property, and so that was great. We have, we've been very fortunate in growing the business. Relocations, we're global.
Well, tell us about AMWAT today. What all? This is your little elevator pitch. What all do you provide?
Okay, so let's just talk about the projects that we're working on right now. So I've got a shipment going to Austria. Just received one from Japan. I've got several developments here in Tallahassee that are being built that we receive all of the interior. So the fixtures, the carpeting, the tile, everything that goes in the inside, we receive it. And as the project progresses, we deliver it. We receive for a lot of interior designers. We receive products when they're renovating a house or a commercial space. We receive everything that's going in. And so we receive it, we inspect it, make sure it's not damaged. We store it, and then we deliver out and install. We do installations as well. We do global relocations, as I just mentioned. We do statewide, we do nationwide, and we have 24 employees. So, yeah.
Well, that's exciting. You've come a long way.
Yeah.
So when you look back at building this business from you and Dean having a truck and a half, what do you think about when you look back on that journey?
I am so grateful. I'm very, very grateful. I love working with Dean, and people are like, oh, how do you work with your husband? Okay, Dean and I are not attached. He goes his way, I go my way. Sometimes we don't even see each other, because we're so busy with
during the workday.
During the workday, we work really well together. And when I think about the journey of how we got here, the reality is that so many people propped us to get here. So many people. Roger Gunnar Vaughn. I mean, we were so young and such a young company, and they helped us in so many ways to keep that insurance going. You know, I mean,
that's a huge piece of the puzzle for your industry. That's a huge piece
of the puzzle. There was a Miss Cooksey at the city of Tallahassee. She's passed, and loved her so much, and we would go see her before the utilities were cut off, and she would give us extensions. I mean, There have been so many people that propped us. And what I learned for every business, especially a small business, when you are struggling financially, you need to make that phone call before they call you. And when you're doing a job for somebody, you're spending that money before you get paid, because your employees get paid, utilities get paid, mortgage, rent, whatever, insurance, all that's got to get paid. I'm very grateful for all of the people that supported us and propped us and helped us out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And we in turn try to do, good and return the favor.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have time to list all the leadership positions and accolades you've won, but maybe the most significant is that you're the current president of the Professional Movers Association of Florida.
Yes.
The first woman to ever hold that position.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
It's great. So there was a plan behind it. The state of Florida regulates the moving industry, but now in the moving industry we have this new breed, and it's called moving brokers. And I don't care for moving brokers. I don't think that there's a necessity for moving brokers in the moving industry. And so the statutes of the state of Florida do not really address the moving brokers because at the time that the statute was developed, there was no moving brokers.
What's a moving broker?
A moving broker is somebody who most of them. Now there are some reputable ones, and there are some reputable ones, but the majority of moving brokers, what they do is they have these very fancy websites, and they pretend to be movers, and so they give a person an estimate, and basically what they're doing is they're brokering a move.
Okay.
So they give them an estimate. The person thinks that they're hiring that move broker is the mover, and so they pay them the estimate. Then what that move broker does is that it tries to sell it to a moving company.
Right.
And more often than not, they have a stable of moving companies that are just as crooked as they are, just as dishonest as they are, that will purchase those, that will take that move and then go on moving day and jack up the price. And so this is happening throughout the country. It's happening in the state of Florida. So
I know somebody that happened to, and they wanted like triple what the estimate was, but I had no idea. That's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Are you helping to fight against that now in your position?
I am. I am.
Yeah.
So I was voted as the first female by my board, all-male board, and so that was the first thing that I wanted to address was the statute. It's been good.
Well, good. Well,
great
congratulations on that.
Thank
That's
you.
pretty cool.
Thank you.
All right, getting back to some awards.
Yes, sir.
You've been named Best of Tallahassee multiple times, Top 100 Women-Led Businesses, Women Business Enterprise of the Year, and others just in the last few years. Mm-hmm. So that must feel good to be recognized in those ways for all your hard work.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mostly boast about the company and our employees. This is really the first time that I really talk about me personally. Most often when you meet me, like I said, my name is Gloria Pugh, CEO of AMWAT Moving, Warehousing, Storage. Tell me about yourself.
Right. Well, I wasn't going to let you get away with that for this.
Yeah, clearly. You opened up this whole well.
That's right. You're also very involved in giving back to the community and maybe best known for your Summer Fill a Truck program that benefits Second Harvest of the Big Bend.
Yes.
How did that happen and why is that important to you?
So when the recession first started in 2008, we visited with Second Harvest with the executive director at the time, and it was the holidays. And so we were like, what can we do to help? And then he said, well, the reality is that it's during the summer months that we really need help, and nobody knows about that. It's when we struggle. And so we decided to come up with an event, a Summer Fill a Truck. And so we reached out to Tallahassee Police Department, and we reached out to the Tallahassee Democrat and to WTXL, ABC, and said, hey, would you guys want to partner with us? Because I was like, I need the media push, and the police department, they're awesome. I've been, I like I said, law enforcement, sometimes they get a bad, rap, but I'm telling you, the majority of law enforcement officers, they're working hard for you.
Sure.
They really are.
Yeah.
So all of them said yes. And so we started this. And so we haven't had a fill a truck since the pandemic. What's happened is that after Summer Fill a Truck, then WTXL started their turkey drive,
right?
Which we are so happy about that. And then everybody started doing their stuff the bus, do this, do that. And so everybody became knowledgeable of, hey, it's not just during the holidays, it's during the summer, it's actually year round. So the fill a truck became diluted, and we're happy about that, because it created other events and other things and awareness.
But you filled that gap for a long time.
Yeah, we did.
And met that need.
Yeah, we did. So we're trying to come up with something different so we can help with Second Harvest. So right now, Second Harvest, they just get a check from us but we're trying to come up with something else.
In 2016, you were interested in running for public office.
Yes.
And threw your hat in the ring, but then there were some change of circumstances that made sense for you to kind of change your mind and kind of pivot there.
Yes.
So what was that experience like, and do you think that you would ever consider running for office again?
So the catalyst for me running for office was that in 2013, one of my employees was shot. and he was shot in the heart in front of his family and friends. He a very good young man, not a statistic, not the statistics for people who are involved in shootings or people who are involved in the lifestyle of drugs, gangs, and what have you, and people who hang out. So it's people who expose themselves to these. And he was not that. They were having a party. These guys came to the party. They were playing a game of cards, and the one young man lost over $10, and he felt disrespected, went and got a gun, and long story short, shot Markeith Gordon in the heart and killed him. And so after that, I was noticing that we were getting a lot of shootings in the city of Tallahassee, Leon County, but nobody was talking about it. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody wanted to admit it. And I thought that somebody needed to admit that we had a gun issue, that we had a violent crime issue.
Right.
Okay. And for all the gun lovers, I have guns. I believe in the right to carry, but I also believe in the right to make sure they're locked up when not in use. And I believe that people shouldn't be shooting, this violent crime. So anyhow, I, for several years, was pounding the pavement, telling people, all the powers that be, that, hey, we have an issue. We need to acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge the issue, how are we going to address it?
Right.
Okay. And so finally I said, you know what? I'm going to run for office. And what I'm going to do is the commissioners want to do all the fun, happy things, but nobody wants to address the things that are ailing our community. I will be that commissioner. I will be the one that addresses what's ailing our community.
Right.
Y'all can build your sidewalk to the the cap, what sidewalk I'm talking about, right?
Right.
You can do your art in the park, and you can do all this other stuff. And yes, we need that because that's good for the economy. It's good for the health of the community. But at the same time, if we're not addressing what's ailing the community, it's going to catch up with us. And so that's why I decided to run for office. It was running for office. Anybody who has run for office, I commend you. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. You become public property, specifically women. You become public property. There are more commentary about women and their appearance than there is about men. And it was a lot of hard work. I met a lot of amazing people. I learned a lot about the community. I learned a lot about gun violence and addressing gun violence. I learned a lot about what was ailing our community. But then the commissioner who was that vacated his seat so he could move, so he could run for another position, I started hearing whispers that he was going to come back to his seat.
Right.
And that was a powerhouse of a politician. And with all the work that I've done, and then, of course, I was still working at AMWAT, but not given AMWAT the attention that it needed. So I called him and I said, dude, if you're coming back into the seat, I need to know right now. I do not want to waste my time. And so he said, yeah, I am going to come back. And so I called, I think it was Jeffrey, because he'd call me, hey, what's going on? Tell me. And Skip too.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm pulling out. I'm not doing this. And so, so we all know how that worked out.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, final two questions.
Yeah.
All right, Gloria, looking back, what is the one thing or person that changed or altered the trajectory of your life to this point?
Dean Pugh. Dean, for sure. Dean, I am a very conservative. Like, if it wasn't for Dean, I'd be living in a shoebox. I'd be like, no, but we don't need that. We just save our money. And so Dean really introduced me to me. I was a very different girl because, I had so many responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, you had such an atypical childhood with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Like you said, when you got up here, your true self was able to come out a little.
Yeah. So Dean definitely has impacted my life. I mean, tremendously. He is just, yeah.
Final question. The podcast is named How I Got Here. Mm-hmm. We've talked about how you got to this point in your life. Mm-hmm. Where do you think here might be for you in 3 to 5 years from now?
I would like to have built a very big receiving distribution center. I would like to grow the company. I am a worker, so I don't see myself retiring anytime soon. I'm not in retirement age, so I have a great management team. So, Dean and I take time off. I mean, it's not like we are, 24/7. So we are very, very fortunate. We've got great employees. I would like to be able to travel more and to be able to continue providing financially, good paying jobs to our employees. I would like to continue on the making ourselves better. I don't compete with my competitors. I compete with myself. I compete with what are we doing and how can we do this better? Just becoming a better person. I would love to be very financially successful so that I can give back more to our community. Just, being a better person, being a better human being. That's what I want to do. I just want to be better.
Thanks for listening to the show. You can subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review. It really does make a difference. Thanks to my amazing staff at Fiore Communications, who pick up the slack while I'm working on these podcasts, and to Troy Bloom for composing our theme music. You can hear more of Troy's creations on Facebook and Instagram at Troy Bloom Music. To connect with the podcast or suggest a future guest, follow us on social media or email us at podcast@fiorecommunications.com.